This video tutorial is for paint charges at East Carolina University to use when putting together the paint shop schedule. What you're going to need before you begin is a calendar and the schedule of availability of all your employees. Go ahead and go get those things and then start the video back up again. You got everything you need? Fabulous. Let's look at a calendar. I'm going to just be looking at a general calendar rather than talking any specifics. This is a general calendar for 2016. We're not going to be talking about a specific production. We're just going to be talking in general. So the first question that you're going to want to ask is, when does the show that you are trying to schedule hours for open? Let's say that we are scheduling hours for a show that opens February 25th. From that, you want to look back and figure out when Paints on Stage Day is. In this specific instance, Paints on Stage Day would be February 18th, 1 week prior to the opening. Now, why is the Paints on Stage Day important? The Paint on Stage Day is important because in our shop, we want Paints on Stage Day to be our final day of doing touch-up notes. This means that we want to have everything painted and completed prior to this, so that on this day we're only doing the final touch-ups and the notes that we weren't able to accomplish up until this point. We really need to be just cleaning up. Why is that important in scheduling hours? That is important in scheduling hours because after Paints on Stage Day, the amount of labor in the shop that is required reduces dramatically. Yes, we still have painting that needs to be done, but it doesn't require as many people. It requires fewer people who know more specifically what needs to get done. Prior to this, though, we will have plenty of need to have a large number of people that are just good labor. So you've identified the opening, you've identified the Paints on Stage Day. You can take a look at the third date you want to take a look at is, what is today's date? Now, if today's date is within 4 or 5 weeks of that Paints on Stage Day, you're talking about a schedule that needs to start immediately. If not, you're talking about a schedule that is going to start relatively sometime before that Paints on Stage Day. At this moment in time, crew students are asked to do 40 hours. I have provided a breakdown of this 40 hours that is generally used for the shows at ECU. At this moment in time, that 40 hours breaks down to a 6-week schedule. So on week 1, the student is spending about 2 to 4 hours. Right now it's about 2 hours. Eventually it'll probably be about 4 hours doing training on the computer before getting into the shop. So that's some hours there, week 1. Week 2 is a regular work week with 8 hours. Week 3 is an 8-hour work week. Week 4 is an 8-hour work week. Week 5 is an 8-hour work week. And week 6 is a 4-hour work week. So 4, 8, 8, 8, 8, and 4. Does anyone know what that all adds up to? That's right. That adds up to 40. So over 6 weeks, a 4 hours for week 1, 8 hours for week 2, 8 hours for week 3, 8 hours for week 4, 8 hours for week 5, 4 hours for week 6. Week 6 is what starts on Paints on Stage Day. So in your thinking, that's week 6. So then you can come backwards. So the 18th to the 25th is week 6. The 11th to the 18th is week 5. The 4th to the 11th is week 4. The 28th to the 4th is week 3. The 21st to the 28th is week 2. And the 14th to the 21st is week 1. So we will want our crew hours to start on January 14th. So then it'll go 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks until the performance. So those are the dates that we're starting and ending on. All right. So those are very important dates. Hopefully, as you did this, as you calculated this for your specific dates, you're writing these things down, because I would definitely need to have these things written down for me as I proceed forward. Now that you know how the hours are split up, we need to figure out what students are available for what hours. If it hasn't already been done so, if it hasn't already been shared with you, please notify me or your faculty mentor that you need access to the Paint Shop shared documents on the Google Drive. When I go to the Paint Shop shared documents, there's an example form and an example spreadsheet which says example availability responses. The form is what got sent out to all student employees. When I click on the form, this is the editable view, so I can click on Live View. This is what that form looks like. You won't actually have to do anything for this form, so I'm only going to briefly show you this form. That's what the availability form looks like. The responses for this from this form are generated into are brought into this spreadsheet. And this is an example of what one of these spreadsheets might look like after students have filled them out. You can see that I have excuse me, I have populated this form with 5 fictional students, well, myself and 4 imaginary students, and their schedules. And so as you scroll across, you can see that across the top, you have the days of the week and the hours of the day. And then as you go down, you can see that each row is a different student. And so as you go from left to right across that row, from column to column, you can see whether the student is available or unavailable. The program is set to color code these, showing that green is available and red is unavailable. So you can see everyone's schedules together at the same time, lined up next to each other, to see where people have common availability. If you were in need of scheduling a meeting with somebody, this would be great in order to connect with that person at a specific time. Or if you're wanting to schedule large groups of people at the same time, this is a great way to do so. So this is what we're going to use to make the schedule for each student. To record the schedule for each student, this is what we do to figure it out. But we need to make a document that is a record of when everyone is working. If you go back to your Google Drive, you can see that there are examples from other shows of what these look like. This is the Rent timesheet. Across the top, it has date, day, name, start, end, total. And then it lists the specific work calls that have been scheduled. And what's great about this is it's sortable. So right now I'm in a view that allows me to look at one day at a time and to see who's coming in at the start of the day and who's coming in later on in the day. It's a little mixed up. Let me reorganize this real quick. So if I sort the start times and then I sort the days, it will put them in an order from consecutive order. So it'll go whoever starts or the earliest time on that first day all the way to the last person scheduled on the last day down at the very bottom, which in this case would be Drew was scheduled on Monday from 4 to 5. So that was the last schedule. So you can look at it in this way to see from one day to the next who's supposed to be there when. What's great about this is that you can also look at it by person. So if I then go to the name column and I sort the sheet by name, you can see that instead of giving it to me by day, I'm able to see it by name, and I'm able to see all of the shifts for a specific person together as a clump. So here's how we go about setting that up. I'm going to close that window. I'm going to go back to the example folder. I'm going to create a new spreadsheet. Let's see here, Google Sheets, there it is, missed it. So this is date, I'm going to put in date, day, name, start, finish, total. All right, and then you can delete all of the additional columns that you don't need. Delete columns G through Z. So now we're only dealing with the columns that we need. Now this row across the top, I'm going to give it a different fill so that I know that it's different than the data that I'm entering. And I'm also going to mouse over this bar right over here at the top of your row numbering system. That little bar can be moved down one row so that as I scroll up and down, that row always stays in place. It locks that row. You can do the same thing with columns if you so desire, but in this case we don't really need to. So if I enter information here and I scroll down, that first row stays where it's at. It doesn't go anywhere. So that'll come in handy later. Okay, now you're ready to start scheduling individual employees for their specific times. So think back onto the calendar and remember how we did 6 weeks of 4, 8, 8, 8, 8, 6 or whatever, or 4. That first week, that 4-hour week that we already determined started on January 14th, we don't have to schedule those hours because that's individual time that the student has with the computer and the training modules. So you don't have to schedule that time. That's on their own. So let's look at the availability for our first student employee and schedule them 8 hours from the 21st to the 28th. We want to get one average work week, and then we're going to just copy and paste it so that they work the same schedule each of those weeks so that it's easier to remember when they have to be in the shop. So let's flip over to that. If you look, let's start with the first employee. Let's go with Joe Smith. Now, if I was going through to do this without paying mind to the needs of the shop, I'd probably go through and I'd just schedule Joe Smith for the first available 8 hours I see him have. And that would be that. Here's why that doesn't really work out so well for us. I want the hours in the shop to be as productive as possible. And so the most productive shop time is when a worker is able to come in for a large chunk of time and that they're able to do a lot of work, start and stop multiple projects rather than coming in for an hour, finding out what to do for 10 minutes, and then working for 30 minutes and then cleaning up for 20 minutes. That's not very productive. I want somebody to come in and figure out what to do for 10 minutes and then work for 2 hours. So you start with large blocks of time. So we're going to start on a Thursday, the 21st. And so Joe is not available at all on Thursdays, but on Fridays he is very available. He is available from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now the shop is scheduled to take a lunch hour from 12 to 1, and if at all possible, we want to maintain that. We also want to make the shop so that it is only open when it needs to be. So we want to consolidate the amount of scheduling that we're doing. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a scheduled time working. I'm going to copy and paste that into his schedule. So I'm going to put in that he's working from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, from 11 to 12, from 1 to 2, to 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Now these should automatically turn yellow, and there they go. They've turned yellow. So now I can see when people are being scheduled, and from this point forward, I'm going to try to schedule other people for these same times that I've started to schedule people. That way I can make sure that the shop is only open when it needs to be. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours scheduled. I'm going to look for one more day. Let's see. Let's try to make this convenient for him. Let's have him come in on Tuesdays at 1 from 1 to 2. And so I'll just paste in that working with the yellow fill to it. So that's my plan for when he's going to be working. Now we want to include that in this spreadsheet that we've made. So Friday the 22nd is the first day. Since we started the work week on Thursday the 21st, this would be 1, 22, 16. This is a Friday. Let me just check the calendar to make sure I'm not crazy. That's correct. 1, 22, 16 is Friday. And this is Joe Smith. He's going to start at 9 a.m. and finish at noon. And then he's going to do another shift. And I'm just going to copy this information since it's the same. He's going to do a shift from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And then he's going to do the next Tuesday. He's working Friday and Tuesday. So if Friday was the 22nd, Tuesday is the 26th. So I'm going to write down 1/26, 16. And that's a Tuesday. Joe Smith, from what time did I mark him down for? 1 to 2 p.m. 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Now, remember how we talked about how the 1 hour time shift is kind of dumb? It just doesn't really work out. So here's what I'm going to do. On that Friday, the 22nd, I'm going to change that to 4 p.m. just so that I can give him a longer shift so that it's a 2-hour shift instead of a 1-hour shift. So I'm gonna just take away that block that I scheduled from 4 to 5 on Friday and replace it with an extra hour on Tuesday. So that way the shifts are a little more equal. All right, so now we've made Joe Smith to have a full work week. Before I go and schedule the rest of his times, I want to establish what everyone's work week is, because as you can see, they might shift a little bit as I accommodate the different workers. So give me just a second. We're going to speed up the video as I determine when these other workers are going to work on this imaginary schedule. Okay, now I've done everybody except for Mr. Busy here, Bill Busy. As you can see, he's a very popular guy, and so his schedule is like all over the place. So I wanted to point him out as a good example of when you just have to do whatever you can, do your best, get him scheduled, get those hours in, even if it's 1 or 2 hour blocks. So I'm going to just give him a few, I'm going to start with 3 hour blocks. It doesn't look like he has any, so let's go down to 2 hour blocks. So I'm going to schedule his available 2 hour blocks. There's 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, and 8 hours. So using his 2 hour blocks, I was able to get that time in. Let me quickly add those times to my spreadsheet. Okay, now that I have everybody scheduled for those 8 hours a week, I want to stop and quickly take a look at my distribution of workers and hours and make sure that it's to my liking. Right now, we don't have anybody working on Wednesdays, and that's okay. Like, putting people to work together in the same shifts is fine. If we had a whole lot of people and you didn't want like 15 people all showing up at once, then spreading them out is good. Right now, in this example, we only have 5 people, so we don't really need to spread them out. If you're looking at like 20 people and you have like 10 people showing up to the shop all at the same time, you know that's not going to be easy. You know that you're not going to be able to give 10 people jobs all at once. So space them out a little bit. So take this opportunity now, before we go on to the next step, to make sure that they are evenly spaced the way that you want them to be. So move those schedules around if you need them to be moved around. So now that we have the 1 week filled out for week number 2, sorted by the names, we can switch to view those by the dates, just by sorting that date column. We can switch back to view it by sorted by name. But what I'm going to be doing to make week 3, week 4, week 5, I want it by date. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy this data, not the actual dates, just the day through the finish. I'm going to copy that whole block. That's week 2. So if I paste it there, that's week 3. Now take note that had I not organized this by date, and it was organized by person instead, when I copied and pasted this second week in there, the dates I would have to do one at a time rather than them all being consecutive and easier for me to change. So that is why you want to make sure to have sorted it by date prior to your doing the copying of 1 week into the next. It'll make adding the new dates in so much easier. If I paste it there, that's week 4. And I paste it there, that's week 5. And so now all I have to do is go in and enter in the dates for those specific weeks. So I know that Thursday of week 3 is 1/28/16. I'm just going to quickly go through down the list and do that. Okay, so now I've gone ahead and made weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the schedule, and you can see that that ends on 2/16, which is right up to leading up to week 16 or week 6, starting on the 18th through the 25th. That's exactly what we wanted. So now I've scheduled everyone for their week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. Now, before I schedule week 6, I'm gonna do some checks and another step. So right now we have it organized by date. So it starts with the first date, ends with the last date. Let's go back to having it organized by name. So I'm gonna go over the name column and I'm gonna sort A to Z. And so that puts all the names, everybody's shifts together. And what I'm gonna do is below, at the end of each person's list, I'm gonna insert a row. And I'm going to schedule that. Let's go ahead and just put that at Christmas of this year. It doesn't really matter what date. Any date, as long as it's after the last date that you're calculating. And I'm going to keep that as a labeled as Bill's date, his work call. And we're just going to use this as a total column, so that over here in this total column, I can put a number for the sum of his hours, so that we'll see when we organize by date, we'll see each person's crew calls and then a total. And I'm just going to write total. This is where the total goes. We're going to see that next to each person's name. And when we resort by date, it's going to put all of those unnecessary rows at the very end. As you can see, it puts it way down there at the bottom since we scheduled it for Christmas. So let's go back and sort sheet. So now we have a place to put his total. Let's figure out how to get this total. Now there are 2 ways to do this, and I'm going to just tell you one that is the by instinct you're going to go, okay, 9 to 11, that's 2 hours. 3 to 5, that's 2 hours. So you're going to want to just type in the numbers here. But here's the deal. If you change those or if you make mistakes, it's going to screw up your overall number. So let's not leave that to human error. Let's go ahead and cancel those out. And so when you're in the cell for the total column, so you're going to click over here on the functions and choose sum, and then you're going to click on the finish time, type in minus, the start time, and click enter. That'll give you another time. And so what we need to do to this column is we need to go up and select the format and that it's a number and it's just a regular number. So that gives us 0.08, which is not correct for the number of hours, but that is correct for the amount of the day that has passed. And that's what that formula is giving us, is the amount of the day that has passed, not the amount of hours. So we take the day and multiply it by the number of hours in a day, 24, that'll give us the number of hours that have passed. So up here where you see the formula that is giving you this number, you want to click up there and add a times 24, and that will give you a formula to calculate the amount of time that passes between the start of the work call and the finish of the work call. To put that into each of the cells, instead of having to retype the equation, you can just copy it and paste it into each of the remaining cells below. Or if you're wanting to be really fancy, you can select all of the cells that you're wanting to copy and paste it into, and using the edit fill down, which is Command D on the Apple or on a Mac, and that'll fill down, that will copy that formula into each of those cells going down, so that you can see where the what the number of hours worked for each call is. So now we've done that, this is where the total goes. Let's go ahead and click on that and just give it a sum of everything that we had in Bill's schedule, all of his work calls. So right now you can see that we've scheduled Bill for 32 hours, which is perfect because that is 8 hours a week over 4 weeks. That is exactly what we are hoping to have him scheduled for. So now I'm going to repeat that same process for each of my other workers so that they as well have an hour total. Now, as you can see, when I was doing this, I discovered that one of my people, instead of having 32 hours, only has 28 hours. So that means that I miscalculated and I scheduled her for only 7 hours a week rather than 8 hours a week. So this is a great way of finding mistakes that you might have made and allowing you to correct them. So I need to schedule her for more time. Jane Smith. You can see the error I made was that on Mondays she's supposed to work from 1 to 5 and not 1 to 4. So I can quickly correct that in the records here. Okay, so now everyone's at 32 hours. So the only thing that's left to do is to schedule week 6. And so basically all you're going to need to do is go ahead and add a few rows and schedule them. So normally a person works 8 hours a week. So for week 6, they don't need to work 8 hours a week because they already have 32 hours and they already have some time that is spent on the computer. And this last week, remember, is the final week before the production. So we don't need everybody all the time. So you'll have to determine whether it's 4 hours or 6 hours or 5 hours. It all depends on how much time was spent in their computer training. So currently they spent 2 hours in computer training, so you'll want to schedule 6 hours for week 6, and that will take care of that. The only other thing to keep in mind is when scheduling week 6 that you don't want to schedule everyone for the beginning of the week. You need to space that out. so that you don't get to the day before Paint on Stage Day and have no workers. You want to make sure to choose some from the beginning. Like if somebody works on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, maybe you'll have them work Tuesday and Friday rather than just Monday and Tuesday. Hopefully that all makes sense. The result of all this work and trouble is that you have a schedule that you can look at and examine visually in terms of who's coming in when together, how that's spaced out over the week, and then in a very quick and orderly spreadsheet that tells you day to day, hour to hour, who's supposed to be here and how long they're going to be there for. So that is the process of setting up a schedule. You will want to make sure to name your schedule, and you can click on up here where it says Untitled Spreadsheet and just name it. So this is the example schedule. And make sure to save it to that drive and give ownership of that file over to your faculty mentor through Drive. That way they can check it, and then the next step would be to send out everyone's individual schedules to them through email, which is very easy the way that we have done this. That if you go to the spreadsheet and just copy that person's schedule and paste it into their email, they will have all the information that you do. And then as changes are required, it's very easy to hop back in, adjust a time, how much change the paint charge is willing to make for individuals isn't a very defined amount. We want to allow them to make slight changes, but if you have somebody that cannot nail down their schedule, at a certain point in time, it is completely reasonable to say, I'm sorry, this is the schedule that we've made. We can't work with it any further. Hopefully that doesn't happen. It hasn't yet. So that is the preferred technique to do this. Make sure to have your faculty mentors' approval prior to sending out the final schedules to people. And then you'll want to print the spreadsheet organized by date and have that in the paint shop. I would say that you want to print these off, a new one when there's major changes. So maybe not every time somebody makes a change, but anytime there's a significant number of changes. All right, let me know what questions you have. Good luck.